There's a lot of talk about Ron Paul being an isolationist. But just because he doesn't want to get involved around the world, he doesn't want to be in Afghanistan, he doesn't want to be in Iraq, doesn't make him an isolationist in the slightest. It just makes him a non interventionist, which is something completely different. A non interventionist is described as somebody who thinks that we should avoid entangling alliances, but still retain diplomacy throughout the whole world and still be friends with other nations, while true isolationism would control trade, the government would control trade, they would control cultural exchange, and they would want to stay as separate from the rest of the world as possible. Now, instead of going to all these wars to spread democracy, um, Ron Paul thinks we should lead by good example, which is not isolationist in nature whatsoever. Now, the most isolationist country right now is something like North Korea, where you can't even travel outside the country. They don't want people going on the internet. They don't want people knowing what's going outside the country. And if you've noticed, we don't even know what goes on in there. When was the last time you heard about something in North Korea? They don't talk about it because they want to keep it as protected as possible. That's what true isolationism is, where they really keep it a secret what goes on in that country. And Ron Paul does not advocate that in the slightest. He wants to show how great America is to the rest of the world and show how great freedom and capitalism are and show that to the rest of the world rather than he not at all he doesn't want to keep us separate at all. He wants to open ourselves up, which is I don't see how that's isolationism. Now back in a 2008 debate with Ron Paul when he was running, but most people didn't know about him, John McCain said that his kind of isolationist thinking is what led to World War II, which makes very little sense to me. If we just let Germany mind their own business after World War One, then World War II probably wouldn't have happened. Because of the Treaty of Versailles, making them pay all those debt, all those war reparations, that led to a terrible economy. Their money was absolutely useless. Now, the German people were so down and depressed that they needed some sort of leader to rise up and make them feel proud again. And that leader turned out to be Hitler. So, had we not gotten involved, World War II wouldn't have happened, which um, I really don't see how Ron Paul's non interventionist policy would have possibly led to the rise of Hitler and World War II. Now, I think if anything, it's the mainstream Republicans who are the more isolationists, considering they seem to support building this whole empire and keeping our friendships within there and blocking ourselves off from the rest of the world rather than having open relationships with the entire world. They're the ones who support tariffs to limit trade and to keep it within America, while Ron Paul thinks we should open up trade and have a truly free market where the entire world competes. Now, I don't see how that's isolationism in the slightest. When if you say isolationism is blocking yourself off from the rest of the world, I see that as opening ourselves more than we already are right now. Just because you don't want to go around the world telling people what to do and kicking them around doesn't necessarily mean you don't want to spread a good example around the world. Doesn't necessarily mean you don't want to be a part of the world. It just doesn't mean, it just means that you don't, there's no reason and it's not in our defense to go around the world and kick people around. So before you dismiss Ron Paul for being an isolationist, make sure you understand the difference between non interventionism and isolationism because both things are worlds apart and have pretty much absolutely nothing to do with each other.
You want to